It's quite unusual to have a conference like this be as active for 13 years as this one. I'd like to give it up for Zuzi and Pavel one more time, just for the continuous leadership that they're providing. When I was in kindergarten, my teacher gave my mom a note. And that note will come up here as soon as I get this working. That note said, "Pete has become quite a discipline problem lately, challenging authority by doing what he wants and not paying attention much." Some might call that insubordination. I like to call that early experiments in leadership. I think my mom agreed because she saved this in my scrapbook. I think she was proud of it. To be honest, I didn't do all that well in school early on. I struggled with subjects such as English, social studies, because I found that there was very few answers that were right. It was very subjective. One person's right was another person's wrong. And so I struggled with all the exceptions to the rules. That is until I found math. Now, math to me was something clean. It was crisp. It had rules. It was right or wrong, and I could immediately tell whether what I was doing was appropriate. And in fact, it was so nice because, at least in my book, my textbook when I was in school, half of the answers, the odd ones, were in the back of the book. And so you get immediate feedback. Did I get it right or wrong? I didn't even have to turn the paper in and wait for a week to get it back to know the answer. That was beautiful. And that's when my school started, at least me in school, started to do well. I started to really start to figure things out. And so for me, math turned into, this is still not clicking. Perhaps it's not on. That could be the problem. There we go. So math turned into science. Science turned into programming. But still, we had rules. Still, we had logic. And yes, the problems got a little bit more complicated. But I found that the more complicated they got, the more energy I could put in, the more value I got at the end to solve it. Because when I got a program to work, I had that feeling of accomplishment. It was right. It worked. There was a right and a wrong. And it was clean and crisp and clear, and that worked until I started to get into work. And I was initially an engineer, and I started working, and then I got more and more into leadership. And I started to realize that the problems I was running into were no longer right or wrong. They were starting to be subjective. I was starting to get into different opinions. Strategy A or B? Well, what's right? And I was feeling like I was a little bit back in elementary school again, where the math wasn't clean or crisp. It was difficult. It was frustrating. It was subjective again. That's when I ran into Mark. Now, at this point, I'm about 5 years into my career. And Mark was somebody that was assigned to me to mentor. My boss, Roy, at the time said, "Pete, here's an intern, not an intern, but a fresh graduate out of school that needs some assistance, that needs some guidance. I would love you to mentor Mark." I didn't want Mark. I didn't need Mark. I was in a sweet spot in my career of development. I would be in these zones. I don't know if you ever get in the flow state of programming. I was in one of those flow states, designing a massive system that was taking a flat file system into a relational database structure system, like for you tech nerds, right? I was doing something pretty cool for me. But that's when Mark showed up in my life. I'm thinking, what do I do now? How do I help Mark and yet still accomplish this goal that I've got in front of me? Mark looked like a distraction to me, so I said, what can I do? And I said, well, maybe I could put Mark on a side project. Mark, let's test you out. I don't think you're ready for the work that I'm doing, so let's put you over here on this other project. I think we use a little import data wizard, something like that. And so for a few weeks, things were good again. I was back in my flow state. I'm working. Mark's doing his thing. Together, but not totally together. And then it's time. Mark and I have to integrate our code. Now, I'm going to date myself here, but this was back in the 90s. So we didn't have a lot of the tools you have today. We didn't have a lot of the processes you have today. This was before the days of Agile. This was before the days of, we were still doing, floppy disks in this days, right? So this is early tech. And so continuous integration wasn't a thing at that time. At least it wasn't known to me at that time. And sure enough, then I start to look at Mark's work. And every negative assumption I had of Mark came true. He wasn't ready for prime time. His code was terrible. His designs stunk. It wasn't good. It wasn't effective. And we had to throw away his entire work. And I put him in the car and I drove him the rest of the way, metaphorically. Now, that was me at the time. Looking back on it, Mark wasn't the problem. I was. Mark wasn't in the way of the work. Mark was my work. And I missed it. And this is something I see every leader that I work with miss. We're not taught in people. We're taught in technologies. One of the things about Mark that taught me something was that when we start to think about leadership, it's this weird intersection where, yes, I'm a leader because of my expertise. I've been assigned a responsibility because of what I've learned and what I know. I had developed a certain set of skills that my boss thought, hey, Pete knows something. Maybe he could impart that knowledge, that expertise on someone else. But yet, when I got to the position of leadership, what was expected of me was to be open. And this is the dichotomy that we struggle with as leaders is yes, I need the expertise, but if I'm not open to what Mark has to present, I fail not only Mark, I fail our project, I failed my company, and I failed my boss. And sure, my relationship with Mark never fully recovered from that. Now, if you're thinking, well, I'm not that person, I'm not that close-minded, let me put this in a metaphor you might understand. Who here, by a show of hands, what is this, clicker, not want to click? Who here, by a show of hands, has a dishwasher in your home? One of those machines. Okay, 95% of you have dishwashers in your home. Let me ask the next question. Who here has somebody in your household who has one way to load that dishwasher? Okay, we're hearing a few chuckles. That person, that's me. What happens when the other person in the household, somebody else who doesn't know how to load the dishwasher that way, what happens when they try to load it? You reload it for them. Now, I've learned something over the time. I've been sharing this little anecdote because it represents a mindset that all of us have in some way. For a dishwasher, what I've realized is there's a formula. Like in math, there's a formula in most people that have one way to load a dishwasher. It looks something like this. Right means the most dishes get the most clean. That means the dishwasher is full in a very orderly way, and they all get clean. And if it's not like this, it's wrong. Now, that's Mark. Mark loaded the dishwasher wrong. And I had to tell Mark, no, there's another way to load the dishwasher. Now, this wasn't just at work. This is at home, too. My wife, Jana, she doesn't load the dishwasher my right way either. And so my relationship at home was struggling as much as my relationships at work. But I've learned something. Now, this has taken me a long time to learn, and I'm going to give it to you for free. Other people's ways of loading the dishwasher aren't necessarily wrong. They have a different right. Now, this took me a long time to figure out what was Jana's right, my wife. What's her right when she loads the dishwasher? Well, what I find her right is right equals the fastest way to load the dish in the dishwasher. It doesn't matter where it goes. This is why all the silverware goes into the front slot. This is why all the dishes just end up wherever they are, because she's optimizing time to load. I'm trying to optimize most dishes clean. Do you see the difference? And once I started to recognize she has a different right, I start to see maybe she's not working against me, she's working in a different way. Now, to be honest, she still loads the dishwasher wrong. But you know what? I no longer get upset. I accept it. I accept her right, and I'm okay with rearranging it to my right if I want to. And I'm okay not to if I want to as well. This is a mindset shift that I'm trying to represent with leadership as well. Mark wasn't wrong. Mark had a different right, and Mark needed me to show up for Mark, and I didn't. Let me fast forward about 5 years. I go from Mark, who was my first employee that I was really responsible to. Now I'm in charge of a whole team. In fact, a couple of teams. I've got multiple people under me, and I'm working with many different engineers in different types of roles, testing, development, things like that. And I'm going through this process. I was brought into this organization because they needed to get some maturity. And I had some experience by this point, not only developing software, but with this thing called Agile. Now, this was still new at the time. This was still in the 90s, by the way. I was very early to Agile. Even before the Agile Manifesto, we were started to work with Scrum. And so about the year 2000, I get invited into this company to help this team, just before the Agile Manifesto is even signed, helping them to bring about Scrum. And so for the first few months, I'm working with this team, and just like Mark, I've learned from Mark because I realized, hey, they need to develop. I can coach them. I can mentor them. I'm in that space now. It's great. We get this Scrum thing going. We're running sprints. We're getting feedback. We're in this new startup world where we're not delivering product yet, but we are getting it from like early alpha to betas. We're getting feedback, things like that. Then one day, I come into the office, and my lead architect says, Pete, we're having a meeting in the conference room. Come join us. Cool. Wasn't on my calendar, but let's go. I walk into the meeting room, and as soon as I walk in, I said, something's not right. Sure enough, I walked right into an intervention. My team said, Pete, you're our Scrum Master, you're our product owner, you're our manager. We have no say. We don't think this is the way Scrum was intended. I said, what do you mean? I thought we were friends. I thought we were I've been trained and raised, I should say raised. I've been raised to respect people. I've been raised to be nice to people. I thought I had an open door. Yet this team felt manipulated. This team felt pushed into a process that they didn't quite understand. Now, this was my first time taking something that I had practiced Scrum into a team that had never done this before. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? What mistakes did I make? Sure, yeah, maybe I could have shared these roles a little bit more. But that answer actually didn't show up for another 5 years for me. I learned and I got a little bit better, but 5 years later, I get brought in by another leader named Ryan. Ryan, just like me, has a team that's brand new. Ryan wants to use an Agile process. Now, Agile's been around for about 5 years, so we're getting to understand Scrum a little bit. It's like 2005 now. And Ryan's like, Pete, we'd love you to help us do this process. And for what was fascinating, this is the only time I've ever done this. The very first day of work for his team, for Ryan's team, this was a brand new startup in the medical space. Their very first day in the office was me teaching them Scrum. That was really cool. Like, they didn't have desks, they didn't have computers. They come in and we learn Scrum, and it was pretty cool. And so we get them going, we get them, even Sprint Zero is like putting our computers together, setting up our workspace, stuff like that. And we get going for a number of sprints, just like me and my team 5 years before. And then I start to get a little bit worried. I realize Ryan knows all of this stuff. Ryan's a lean black belt. Ryan has tremendous amount of Scrum experience. And I start thinking, why did he bring me in? Oh, he has this information. He could have done this himself. What does he need me for? And at first I was a little bit hesitant to ask Ryan, but over time I said, okay, Ryan, what is it you brought me in for? Why did you need me? Because you have all of this information. He told me something. He said, Pete, if I had the team do Agile Scrum, they would do it because I said so. But because you came in and taught us, we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And that blew me away at the time. And it took me back to my team and how I brought in Agile into my team with an assumption that this was a we. But it came from a me. Now, to get your attention, think about a referee on the soccer football pitch. A referee has what we call the authority, the whistle, right? We know that if a referee fails to use their whistle, what happens? Chaos. I can learn to cheat. Oh, you're not going to blow a foul? I'm going to foul, right? So we know the game will descend into chaos if the referee does not use their authority. But you know what? What happens if the referee calls too many whistles? Too many fouls? Same thing. You lose the crowd. People are confused. Why is that? What is a foul anymore? I don't even know what a foul is, and you're calling fouls all the time. And so the same thing happens. So what we realize is authority is necessary. Too little, things go into problem. Too much, things get into problem. Have you ever noticed what great referees do? What's that? Follow the game. Notice a referee before a game even starts. Notice a referee during timeouts. Notice a referee during fouls. What are they doing? They're talking. They're sharing. They're starting to coach. They're sharing, hey, I'm warning you now, that's going to be a foul. They're building relationship. They're developing respect so that they don't even have to blow the whistle. What I failed to do that Ryan did was recognize that every leader comes with authority. Your position, your title as a leader, by default, has a whistle. You can call the foul. You get to play the status card. I'm leader. Whether or not we say it or not, everybody else sees it. My team saw it. They felt it. Even though I wasn't playing my hand as I'm leader, do as I say, they ceded me that power of authority. And it wasn't until I recognized what Ryan did, which was he physically set his authority aside. Yes, he brought me in, but what he did is he put himself on the side of the team. I'm one of the team. And what that created was a completely different dynamic. And I'm not suggesting you always bring in a consultant to help you do this or that. What I'm suggesting is every leader carries authority, and if you can't find the right balance between respect and authority, you're going to struggle as a leader. Now, what I'm sharing here is a world that I grew up in, that I loved, which was math, which was programming, which was science, had problems that could be solved. And what I'm starting to describe to you is in leadership, those all fade away. And the problems are no longer problems that can be solved. They're only what we call tensions that can be managed. These are never going to go away. There's never going to be an answer. There's never going to be a place where you can go and say, this is right, this is wrong. This is something we call a tension. So, can I get 2 volunteers to come up, please? I need 2 volunteers. All right, we got 1, and we got 2. Awesome. Thank you. Come on up. I have a little bit of Anya. Thank you for joining us from Microsoft. No, Mochasoft. This thing echoes a little bit. I apologize for that. And Daniel from
A bank.
Raffensbank.
Bank, yeah.
Raffensbank. Yeah, Raffensbank. Close enough. Okay, so Anya and Daniel are representing tension. Now, when we start to think about what we just described, unlike problems that can be solved, tensions are only things that can be managed. They never go away. So create tension in this rubber band. A little more. How does that feel? Tense. A little frightened. Is he going to let go? Don't let go. What we're recognizing here is tension represents 2 things that are necessary. And if we have too much of one, it creates tension in the other. Too much of the other, it creates tension in the first. And that this will never go away. Whether it's your expertise, what I know, is that on this side? Versus being open to others and what they know, like me and Michael. Or whether it's my authority and what I use as my calling card as a leader, do this because I'm the leader, or do I gain respect from my team? These are 2 tensions that leaders are going to face that will never go away. Can you think of other tensions leaders face? What other tensions do leaders, do you think, face? That have two possible rights, but still struggle.
Shared decision making.
Okay, so do I make the decision or do I empower decision making? Great one. What else? Yeah, so now we're getting a little more organizational, and we'll get to some of those, development and business. What else? Let's stay on the leadership side, the personal side. That's on the organization side too. What about strategic and tactical? Hands-on, hands-off. There's a few of these. How are you guys feeling?
Yeah.
You getting sore?
Yes.
Yeah? Tension wears on you. You guys are doing great. Okay, I want everybody to just do a quick QR code. I want to grab some thoughts from you. You guys keep going. I want you to hold that tension. Hold that tension. This is your workout. The rest of you can come to menti.com. We're just going to do a click the heart when you get there so I know you're in. All right, we've got about 100. How many people are here, Zuzi? Couple hundred? All right. Most of you are getting there. This is the one time in a keynote you're allowed to take out your phones and play along. If you ever get stuck, we have the code that you can always go to menti.com and type the code. Looks like we're pretty close, so we're going to go ahead. Okay, so this is a very simple question. Your screen refreshed. It says, what is your leadership situation at work? I'm a leader, I'm not a leader, I don't know. Or I'm between jobs. That's your... Oh, look at all the leaders in the room. By the way, we use the word leadership. A leader is a position. Leadership is the act. Every single person can demonstrate leadership. Basically, it means to influence others towards common goals. You do not have to be a leader to demonstrate leadership. Hope you understand that. It's awesome. Good to see all the leaders in the room. Okay, what tensions are you facing? This one's a little harder. You got to drag the little things up in order, like there's a ranking. Which one of these tensions are you feeling the most? And you can vote for as many of them as you want in order. So it's your expertise versus being open, we talked about. Get work done versus leading others. We have short-term versus long-term, kind of strategic, tactical. Aligning others, empowering others, direct to tell. You can actually vote on a bunch of those and rank them. How are you guys feeling? Is it tense? Are you getting tired?
Yes.
Yeah? It's a workout. That's what tension does, by the way. Tension will never go away. How do we ease tension? Or we start to come together. So go ahead and start coming together. What does that mean when we're coming together here as a leader? It means I'm doing both ends. I'm strategic and tactical. I'm empowering and I'm deciding. I'm authority and respect, right? Coming together means we've got to blend a little bit of these. Oh, that's interesting. The top one here is direct tell versus coach ask. Get work done versus lead others. Oh, we got a fair amount. I think I have one more question for you. Let you, any final submissions on that one? How much tension are you feeling personally? This is your person. What is, you get one choice in this one. No tension, slight tension, moderate tension, high, extreme. Oh man, we have a lot of stressed people. We need spa. We need a spa. Well, moderate. Okay, we got a little bit of a bell curve. Tension will always be there. This is one of those things that I learned as a leadership coach. Tension will never go away. If you're hoping that you're ever going to solve these problems, you won't. And what I find when we teach leadership is if you're in a mindset where you say, I'm going to solve this, you're going to get more frustrated and it's going to create more tension. If you start to recognize it's a tension that will never go away, you start to work with it and it start to manage it more effectively. Now, I need 2 more volunteers to come up and work with these two. Do I get 2 more volunteers? Two more volunteers. Grab 2 more parts of this and pull. Tension, by the way, is not just bi-directional. No.
From the middle?
Grab from the middle.
Okay.
There's a right way to create. Lisa's like, Pete, there is not a right way to do this tension. Okay, you guys pull now the other ways. All right, my point here is sometimes tension is not just between 2 things. What are some things you think about now as you start to think about the organization where tension is multidimensional? Any ideas? Budget. Yeah, think about your strategic decisions. Where do we spend money? Do you think it's just between business and tech? No. All of your leaders have stakeholders. They're all pulling in different directions. So what does that do? That creates tension for everyone else. What else? Priorities. Work-life balance. Politics. Think of departments and how they're doing infighting. How do we ease tension, team? How do you ease tension? Come together. Come together. Give these guys a hand. Let me tell you a story about Amy. Who here is in product management, product ownership? Do we have any product owners in the room? Not that many. Surprising. Only like 3. How about Scrum Masters in the room? Oh man, the whole room's full of Scrum Masters. I used to teach product ownership and Scrum Mastership. I don't anymore. The reason I don't is that's a game that Scrum teams play, and I find most Scrum teams can play that game fine. Leaders are playing a different game. They don't always play Scrum. And now nobody's there to help them understand what game to play, and that's what we do. That's what Agile Leadership Journey does. We help leaders understand the game that they need to play in order for Scrum and other ways of working Agile work. Now, Amy was a product owner on a Scrum team. It was an IT team that supported the business. It was an internal team, and she had many stakeholders. And when I talked to Amy, Amy said, Pete, I'm so tired. I said, tell me more. Said, I go to a stakeholder and I get a request. And I said, that's fine. And I go back to my team, and I talk to my team, and they said, yeah, but we've got these other priorities. And then I go to another stakeholder, and yet they have a different request. And these requests from all these different stakeholders aren't aligned. She says, I feel like I'm playing ping pong, but I'm actually not playing, I'm the ball. And I said, ooh, that hurts. She was describing getting whacked around the organizational ping pong table. I need this. I can't do this. We don't have enough capacity. We don't have, and so she's just getting hit around. And so this isn't leadership. This is being reactive. And I said, sorry, that sucks. I said, if you could design any other game that you would play, what would it be? She thought about that for a bit. She said, what did you say? Volleyball? Okay. She said, I don't know the game, but I wish the stakeholders would play each other, not me. I thought, wow, okay. So it sounds like maybe you're like a referee, or I said, maybe you're like the judge or like a dealer. And she said, that's it. We talked and we said, what about a game of poker? Where you are not playing the game, but you are dealing the game. So what she's dealing with here there is no right on these answers, right? These are priorities. These are just differences of opinion. Back to my elementary school, right? She's fighting the fact that all these stakeholders have their version of right. There aren't right answers, but there are better ways to make decisions. And that's what Amy and I were working on. So she said, okay, well, what if we're playing a game of poker? What does that look like? So she and I kind of brainstormed this, and she designed a meeting where she brought all the stakeholders to the table at once. And she said, I am going to deal the cards, meaning I'm going to help them understand this is our team's capacity. And then she said, this is going to be a really contentious meeting. So she named it Battlezoid for some reason. It's like a cage match. And what Amy did was she said, stakeholder, if you want a priority done, you must come to the meeting, because if you don't come, your idea is not going to get attention. And number two, you don't have to convince me. You have to convince your peers. So what did Amy do? Amy switched from being the person getting batted around the table to being the person facilitating a better decision. This tension will never go away. We're never going to get out of this mode of, do we do A, B, C, or D? There is no right answer to that question. If you're in this mode of thinking, I'm going to optimize that system, forget it. It doesn't exist. What exists is better decision processing. And that's what Amy came to. Now, it wasn't perfect. It didn't always go well. But she started to learn how to manage that tension. This mindset that we're talking about is what we teach at the Agile Leadership Journey to leaders. When I think about this as a problem to solve, like I did in math, or I do in computer science, I'm thinking in terms of or. Mark was either right or wrong. I was right, Mark was wrong. That doesn't exist in leadership. What we have to think about in leadership, tensions need an end-based management. It's both and. Yes, all these stakeholders are right and wrong. Each of these priorities is right and wrong. I need to be strategic and tactical. I need to be empowering and decision-making. There isn't a or. It doesn't exist. And when we work with a lot of leaders, especially in technology, we find most of them want to live in the or land. And that's where we get into trouble. Anybody fight between business and tech? Yeah. It's a common one. Right? We see this a lot, whether it's different departments, right? There's a lot of organizational tensions. Go fast, go together, keep things running, do new things, centralize, decentralize, align, empower. Organizational tension is all over the place. When we're working with organizations, there's always just slightly different forms of these types of tensions, right? And what we see a lot of times is organizational swing. Oh, let's centralize. No, let's decentralize. And you have this big pendulum swing, and we just go back and forth, and that's a very dysfunctional way. Well, we can actually start to map tension. We can actually work with leaders and say, you know what? We can visualize your tension. We use a framework, and we've got it out there on our table, and I can share that with you when you come out to our table. I can share, we have a framework that says, let's model that tension. Now, there's 4 basic elements that show up in that tension. One is focused on the green here that says, innovate, do new things. We have one that says, let's just go fast, create stuff. One that says, oh, let's do it right, let's scale it, let's operationalize it, let's organize it, that's red. Or let's align it, let's do it together, let's collaborate, right? These are tensions in the organization. You know what? We can actually survey this. This is a map of tension in one organization we worked with in Northern Ireland. This was a bank. I want you just to look at that for just a second. What this is showing you is 2 things. It's showing you how leaders feel versus employees, right? This is the top half of the organization, the bottom half of the organization. It also shows how they feel today and what they wish it would feel like. So notice what's happening here. If we look at, I don't know if this has a pointer on it. I don't think it does. Oh, there it is. There it is. If we look down here, you'll notice they both agree we have too much control. This is like authority, do by the rules, follow the process. And they desire more creativity, more innovation. There's a shared direction. Leaders and employees feel the same thing. We feel like we have too much structure, process, and control. And this is true. Barclays, if you're here, you probably feel the same thing. All banks do, right? You're not alone. There's a lot of industries. Healthcare feels this way. Transportation feels this way. There's a lot of kind of safety-oriented types of industries that will derive this, and that's normal. They're missing this. But notice what's happening on these 2. Notice how leaders are feeling like, oh, collaborate, do things together, work together, and compete, go quickly. Leaders are like, we're cool, everything's great. And employees are like, hell no. All we hear is go, 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 get it done. Does anybody feel pressure to get stuff done at work? Yeah. Businesses are under a lot of intense pressure today. They were no different. Now the question is, when we worked with the leadership team here, we showed them this data. And we don't come with answers, we come with questions. So when we go to the leadership team, we say, why is this happening? And it was pretty obvious why the red and the green, the control to create, why that was happening, because they're a bank and they know that they have a lot of heavy structure process for governance and all that, and they needed more innovation. That was well known, so we didn't talk too much about that. But we talked about the other one. And what was really fascinating is to watch the reaction of these leaders go through this process, because here they were at an offsite in Northern Ireland. They were collaborating on strategy. They're collaborating on organizational design. They're working together. And then what do? They put it in a PowerPoint. They go to an all-hands meeting, and they tell everybody, this is our beautiful strategy. And by the way, we're late, so get going. And that's what everybody else feels. All they feel is the end result. Go, go, go. We're already late. We're already behind. Just go. So what's happening is leaders, they collaborate. Employees don't. What's fascinating is that once we start to see the data, leaders start to see how they're creating tension. And when they see how they're creating tension, they can see how to ease tension. This is the diagram from 18 months later, a year and a half. I'll just swap between the 2. Does it go backwards? Doesn't want to go backwards. I'll just go to my computer, go back and forth. So this tension to this tension. What we're visualizing is alignment. Not perfect. There's no perfect organization. What we're visualizing is we're healthier. Think about this a little bit like a road team, a crew team, right? Where does speed come from? Well, speed comes from strength, but also alignment, our rhythm in the water. The same thing with leadership and organization. Strength comes from great people working together towards common goals. And when we don't have that, we have splashing in the water and we have ineffective organizations. That's what we find in most organizations. They don't have bad people, they just aren't working well together. This team got better because they started to learn how to work together. And then you're going to ask, Pete, what did they do to get this result? It wasn't important what they did. In fact, we don't even tell leaders what to do. What we do is we tell them how to do it. They needed to share strategy. All we tell them is how to share strategy. If you want to come talk to me during other break times, I'm happy to share a little bit about how we do that. We use a tool called the Catalyst Canvas that helps spread things like that. Okay, so what are we doing? Basically, we're integrating parts of the business together. I won't go into those details. I want to leave a little bit of room here for Q&A. But I want to ask you a couple of questions again. So go back to your mobile phones. It should still be there unless you closed your screens or put your tab away. If you did, you can always go to menti.com and go type in that code. But if you are still there, here's your test question. I can demonstrate leadership. Leadership is for people with titles. That's your test question for today. Looks like you're passing. Our philosophy is everyone demonstrates leadership. Everyone, regardless of position, regardless of title, regardless of status, you can demonstrate leadership. Okay, rank these tensions in your organization. So again, you can drag multiple up if you'd like. Which ones is your organization struggling with most? Put that at the top. These are ones we see quite a bit. Anybody have a tension that isn't represented up here that you're feeling in your organization? Speed versus quality. Plan versus adapt. All right. Thank you for your answers. I want to do one final one before we're going to hand over to. I'm going to skip that question. One final one before we hand over to Linda for her keynote. My guess is every organization, and you put it up there, plan versus adapt, right? This is another one of those that will never get solved. We think with the Agile Manifesto and with Agile, hey, we live on one side of this, right? We're here to adapt to change. The challenge is organizations need both of these. Now, here's one of the things that I see many organizations doing. Oh, here we go. They treat it like a switch. They say, we are either going to follow PMI or a plan-based approach, waterfall, or we're going to use Agile. I treat it like a switch. We say it's not a switch. Think about it more like a dial. How much agility does this program need? How much uncertainty are we living in right now? How much technical uncertainty? How much market uncertainty? How much is our people uncertainty? And when we start to talk to leaders and say, if you can put it on a dial and say, hey, this project needs about an 8 agility versus this project needs about a 3 agility, we're sharing expectations. Now, if we start to inspect and adapt and we start to pivot, we know why. Because we recognize the agility we need. And I believe, actually, to some degree, the Agile Manifesto caused this problem. I understand why the Agile Manifesto was created this way, because they needed to create a clear calling for what we're trying to do. What they're basically saying in the Agile Manifesto is one side of this tension is preferred over the other, right? People over process. And I'm summarizing here. Collaboration over contracts, progress over documents, adapting over planning. They were saying, we're preferencing one side of this tension. The reason they were saying that is because the other side was getting too much attention. But I believe we need to be living in a land that says the Agile Manifesto needs to be an end. It's people and process. It's collaboration and contracts. It's progress and documentation. And it's adapting and planning. And I think if we cannot get to an end, Agile's never going to cross the threshold of being accepted well in the organization. If we keep fighting as if the other one is wrong, you're going to lose that battle. And this is why I believe a lot of Agile has lost the battle, is because we've been fighting something that doesn't ever going to go away. We are never going to go away from the need for planning, documents, contracts, and process. Those are always going to need to be there. They just need to be in balance. And yes, they've been out of balance, but Agile tried to swing the pendulum too far, and the industry pushed back and said, that's not good enough. And I believe we've got to find a way to ease that tension. Do I got a couple minutes for a question or two? We okay on that? 2 minutes for a question or two? Any questions that you would like to ask here? Otherwise, I am available for the full 2 days. I'm going to be here. But any questions live?
I've got one for the visualization tool for tension.
Yeah.
The second picture, how do you know it was better? Maybe the speaker doesn't keep us over these.
Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, does moving things together mean progress? Does it mean better? And it could be that people lie on surveys, right? That's certainly possible. What we do is we don't necessarily depend on this, right? This is a data point. What we depend on are things like, is the business actually improving in delivery? Is there less issues going on in employee engagement? So there's other factors that we check this against. And so that is a very valid question. But what we have seen time and time and again is when these lines start to come together, the organization improves and is healthier. Yeah. It's not a perfect match, but it is an indicator. Yeah. Correlation, causation. Yeah. Another question? Yes, here.
What is the first small step to achieve this balance?
Yeah. So the first step from our perspective is awareness. I mean, take any 12-step process, right? It's accepting who I am, recognizing I have a problem. To us, the biggest challenge, the biggest barrier is leaders not knowing there's a problem to be solved, or not knowing that they are causing the problem to be solved. And so for us, if leaders do not go on this journey, nothing will get better. If leaders think their role is to green light an Agile project, that will not be successful. We don't get involved in an organization unless leaders accept the fact that they are part of the solution, that they have to go through this process. The way we talk about this is an organization mirrors its leaders. If leaders don't go on a journey, the organization will not follow along. And that's what we do. So the first step is awareness and recognition of the challenge. Yeah. So tensions will never be solved. They can only be managed, and organizations mirror their leaders. I did write a book that did just come out like this week. So I do have a couple of copies out there if you want to look at it. What I did with this book was a little bit different. I don't teach any of the models, any of the tools. I don't use any Agile jargon. The persona I had in mind was my nieces and nephews. If there was an essence of leadership, what would they need to hear that make for effective leadership? That's the way we wrote this. And so it's a leadership storybook, not a technique and tool book. So if you're interested, it is available for purchase in hard copy right now that just came out. And we'll have more information about Agile Leadership Journey, but available at the booth. So I just want to say thank you for letting me open up.